Saturday night inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse was supposed to feel like another checkpoint in the rise of the Indiana Fever. Another sold-out crowd. Another electric performance from Caitlin Clark. Another reminder that women's basketball has entered a completely different financial and cultural universe than the one this league operated in even 2 years ago. Instead, by the end of the night, the arena felt tense. Not loud tense. Not rivalry tense. Structural tense. The kind of tension that settles over a franchise the moment everybody in the building realizes the problem isn't one bad loss. It's the architecture underneath the loss. Because while Clark was out there scoring 32 points, drilling 7 threes, forcing overtime, and trying to drag Indiana across the finish line possession by possession, the most important player on the floor was no longer on the floor at all. Aliyah Boston had already disappeared down the tunnel with a lower leg injury. The broadcast team confirmed she would not return. And suddenly the Fever looked frighteningly small. Washington attacked the paint over and over again. Layups. Rotations missed. Second chances. Interior defensive collapses. The Washington Mystics, a roster still heavily associated with rookies and second-year players, outscored Indiana by 30 in the paint. 30. That number alone tells the entire story of the game. Because once Boston left, Indiana no longer had an answer structurally. Not emotionally. Not tactically. Structurally. And that distinction matters. Because emotional losses happen in sports all the time. Bad shooting nights happen. Turnover-heavy games happen. But when a single injury instantly exposes the foundational weakness of your roster construction, that's different. That's organizational. That's months in the making. And that's why Fever fans are suddenly furious. Not simply because Indiana lost, but because this exact scenario was predictable. Aliyah Boston is not just another all-star. She is the center of Indiana's future, literally and symbolically. In April, the Fever handed her the largest contract in WNBA history. For years. $6. $3 million. And the structure of that deal mattered just as much as the headline itself. Indiana intentionally designed the contract so Boston's first-year salary would land roughly $190,000 below the maximum allowed number.
Why?
Flexibility. Room to build around her. Room to strengthen the roster. Room to protect the investment. That was the entire point. And then came the offseason. And somehow, despite all that careful financial engineering, the Fever emerged from roster construction still dangerously thin behind Boston in the front court. That's the part people cannot stop talking about now. Because the off-season additions clearly reveal what Indiana prioritized.
Guards.
Perimeter scoring. Wing depth. Additional ball handling. The Fever retained Lexi Hall. They drafted more guards. They continued building around spacing and offensive versatility. And meanwhile, the backup center situation remained alarmingly fragile. There was no true defensive anchor behind Boston. No proven rim protector. No physically imposing reserve capable of stabilizing the paint if Boston missed time or simply needed rest. The organization effectively gambled that Boston's availability would hold everything together. Saturday night exposed what happens when that assumption breaks. And suddenly former roster decisions started looking a lot uglier. Because the receipts are everywhere now. Natasha Howard leaves Indiana. Now she's thriving elsewhere. On Thursday night against Dallas, Howard scored 26 points for the Minnesota Lynx, dominating the second half and controlling the game physically. Indiana fans watched that stat line circulate online while Boston sat injured. That timing couldn't have been worse. Then there's Odyssey Sims. Another former Fever player. Another veteran who walked away. Another player who immediately hurt Indiana after leaving. Suddenly what looked like disciplined cap management during the offseason now feels more like talent leakage. And in sports, perception changes fast when losses start piling up around obvious roster holes. What makes this criticism sharper is that Indiana's front office absolutely understands championship basketball. This isn't an inexperienced group learning on the fly. Kelly Krauskopf built championship rosters before. She helped construct the Fever title team in 2012. She knows what depth looks like. She knows what physical playoff basketball requires. She understands how quickly injuries expose weak rotations. Below her, Amber Cox manages day-to-day operations and cap logistics. This wasn't accidental ignorance. It was prioritization. That's what makes the debate uncomfortable. Indiana made a conscious decision to preserve future flexibility instead of aggressively reinforcing the front court immediately. And now fans are asking whether the franchise underestimated how fragile this roster balance really was. Because the Fever aren't just building around stars anymore. They're building around expectations. That changes everything. Before Clark arrived, Indiana could develop patiently. Now, every roster decision exists under a national spotlight. Every weakness becomes visible immediately. Every imbalance gets discussed across sports television, social media, podcasts, and league circles within hours. And right now the imbalance is obvious. Indiana looks explosive offensively, but physically vulnerable underneath. Saturday made that impossible to ignore, especially because Clark did almost everything correctly. This wasn't a poor Caitlin Clark performance hidden inside a loss. This was the opposite. She delivered exactly the kind of superstar fourth quarter people expect from generational players. Big shots, deep threes, playmaking under pressure, overtime creation. The problem is that basketball eventually punishes incomplete roster construction, no matter how brilliant one perimeter player becomes. Clark cannot fix rim protection. Clark cannot absorb front court defensive assignments. Clark cannot prevent opponents from dominating the paint when Boston exits the game. That's not criticism of Clark. That's reality. Even the greatest guards in basketball history needed interior structure behind them. And this is where the conversation starts becoming bigger than one injury. Because Aliyah Boston's situation is now being interpreted by fans as a preview. A warning sign. A test case for how Indiana treats cornerstone players. The Fever paid Boston historic money. But did they actually protect her environment? That's the real question. Because paying stars and protecting stars are not identical responsibilities. Organizations love announcing contracts. Fans care about whether the infrastructure surrounding those contracts actually supports winning. Right now, Fever fans are staring at the front court rotation wondering how a team with championship ambitions entered the season this exposed inside. And the anxiety grows larger because of who's coming next in Indiana's future. Clark's eventual Supermax negotiations are already hovering in the background of conversations like this. Not officially, not publicly, but emotionally? Absolutely. Because someday soon Indiana will ask Clark to commit long-term at historic numbers too. And when that moment arrives, the organization will need to prove more than financial willingness. It will need to prove competitive seriousness. Can the Fever build sustainably around elite talent? Can they protect their stars physically? Can they create depth strong enough to survive inevitable injuries? Can they maximize championship windows instead of merely marketing them? Those questions suddenly feel much louder after Saturday night, especially because this franchise is not cheap in every area. That's important context. Herb Simon approved a massive new training facility project for the Fever, a reported $78 million investment. The renderings are beautiful. The vision looks modern. State-of-the-art amenities. Long-term commitment. Everything about it signals organizational ambition. But there's a cruel irony inside the timing. A 2027 facility does nothing for a 2026 front court rotation. Fans watching Boston limp into the locker room were not thinking about luxury recovery rooms opening next year. They were thinking about Wednesday night. About who protects the paint now. About whether Boston should even be rushing back early in the season because the roster behind her is too thin to survive without her. That's the dangerous territory Indiana is entering. Because when stars begin carrying unsustainable burdens early in seasons, injuries become compounded by pressure. And pressure changes decision-making. Maybe Boston pushes through more discomfort because the team needs her desperately. Maybe minutes stay higher than ideal because there's no trustworthy replacement. Maybe physical wear accumulates faster because the depth behind her isn't absorbing enough responsibility. That's how organizational mistakes quietly snowball. Not all at once. Incrementally. Possession by possession. Game by game. And now comes Wednesday. The Portland Fire walk into Gainbridge. An expansion franchise. A roster built around young players, experimentation, and long-term development. On paper, this should be comfortable for Indiana, but injuries rewrite paper quickly. Now the Fever enter the matchup uncertain about Boston's condition, uncertain about her minutes, and uncertain about who stabilizes the defense if she's limited again. That uncertainty alone changes the emotional texture of the game completely. And maybe the harshest part of all this is that none of these concerns erase how exciting Indiana still is. That's what makes the situation feel so tense. Because the potential is obvious. Clark is transformational. Boston is foundational. Mitchell remains elite offensively. The fanbase is energized in ways the franchise hasn't experienced in years. National attention is unprecedented. The opportunity is enormous. Which is exactly why the weaknesses feel so alarming. Because windows in professional sports never stay open automatically. You have to reinforce them constantly, aggressively, ruthlessly, especially when expectations explode this quickly. Saturday night didn't just expose an injury problem. It exposed a protection problem. And until Indiana proves it can survive physically when one star leaves the floor, every contender conversation around this team is going to come with the same uncomfortable follow-up question. What happens if Aliyah Boston can't carry this front court alone?